Hey guys, welcome back again. Greg Melita here. I'm with Brian DeLuca, and we have episode 2 today. We had a real special guest, Jordan Edwards of the Business Jiu Jitsu Podcast. And Jordan, I've met over the last couple of years at my academy here in Hampton Jiu Jitsu. Real pleasure for him coming out and training and just sharing the mats together. That's the whole.
I heard he was training here this morning with you, man.
He was here this morning. Yeah, he was here this morning. We have Professor Rich's advanced class. So we jumped into that, and then we have our regular class. So we definitely wanted Jordan to come on. Now, Jordan's podcast, Business Jiu Jitsu, is definitely has taken the Jiu Jitsu space by storm here with the big names that he's had on the show. And I was lucky enough to be, I think, what was it, episode 5, Jordan?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Episode 5. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was episode 5 on there. If you guys want to check that out on YouTube, subscribe, Business Jiu Jitsu, and social media as well. But really what Jordan's doing is highlighting how business and jiu-jitsu obviously intertwine. So Jordan, give us a little background and history on yourself and how you came about to business jiu-jitsu.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me, guys. And Greg, let me just restate that I'm so grateful that you opened your academy in Southampton. I've been coming out to West Hampton Beach for the summers my whole entire life. And I started training in 2009. And when I was coming out here for so many years, there was nowhere to train local. One day I'm driving down Southampton, down 27, and I was like, Hampton Jiu-Jitsu? There's Jiu-Jitsu in the Hamptons? And then like a week, then I started following you guys on Instagram, and then Conor McGregor's there, and just like Eddie Cummings is there. And that's when I made it a point to get down there. And that's when I met you guys. So thank you so much for always including me and make me feel so welcome over these past 3 years.
Of course.
I am the CEO of a company called Chart Organization. Chart Organization is primarily a real estate investment company, although we have other investments as well. One of our main investments is called Mixology Clothing Company. Mixology Clothing Company is a company I'm also the CEO of. We have 12 retail clothing stores and an e-commerce website. And so that's my 2 main gigs, is fashion and real estate. All of my background is in real estate. My sister is really the fashion person in the family, but the retail business is very real estate driven because all of our locations need to be built out and leases need to be signed. So those 2 businesses go hand in hand very, very well. And after my first 10 years in business, my father and I co-authored a book together called This Is It. And it was all about the principles that we use to grow different businesses, all different types of businesses. And it discusses a lot of our successes, a lot of our failures, of which we've had many. And hold on one second over here. Just got logged out. Sorry. A lot of our successes, a lot of our failures. And that book took about 1.5 years to produce. The day that it was done, I said, I want to write another book. And I already knew what I wanted to write it about. I wanted to write it about jiu-jitsu, and because it had been so impactful in my life. Now, I am never going to be a world champion. I am a competent mid-level jiu-jitsu player, but the lessons and the principles have been so impactful in the crossover in the business world. Simple things, explicit things like staying cool under pressure, or were you cutting in over there?
Oh yeah, no. I was going to say, for everyone who doesn't know, what's the title of the book, right? So what is your book? So let's get a little promo in there for it.
So my first book was This Is It, and my new book is called Business Jiu Jitsu also. So I started writing this book and conceptualizing the book. And I said, why don't I start a podcast so I can go out and start talking to people that I'm interested in and get a little research going? Well, that was in January of 2020. We all know what happened in March of 2020. COVID hit. So the original goal of my of the podcast was to go train with people, go around the country, sit down with people like Greg, people like Rich, people like John Donahar and Gordon, whoever was going to talk to me, and train with them and then pick their brain after. When COVID hit, I had to readjust my approach, and I started using StreamYard, which is the same service you guys are using here, and reaching out to people of all different backgrounds, all different skill levels, beginners, world champions, some of the best jiu-jitsu players in the world, best coaches in the world, Olympians, billionaires. And what do you know? They all wanted to talk to me. Why they all want to talk to me? Because the same experience that I had with jiu-jitsu, so many other people had with jiu-jitsu, where it had been just an incredible impact on not only the competition circuit or on the mat, but in other places in their life too. So this is a common thread and something that I'm looking to get out of the heart of in this new book.
Awesome. Now I know, I've seen some of your videos, right? And you talk a lot about even just like leading versus following. So meaning like, you're CEO, you got to lead a lot of people, but then when you're on the mat, sometimes you're following your instructors, or, you're being put in your place. You're being, a lot of physical activity versus, what you're doing at work. Can you talk a little bit about the mindset there between leading and following?
Sure. One of the things that's paramount to leading is being able to be a great follower. The only way to emerge and learn how to lead is by humbling yourself enough to be a great learner. All of the best leaders that I know are incredibly inquisitive when they get around people. They want to know information. They ask you a lot of questions. They're engaging. And so when you are a student in a jiu-jitsu academy and you have senior students, you have a professor, it's very explicit, the pecking order, and that's represented in the belt system. Now, when you come, no matter how great, how rich, how talented, how fast you are, how many muscles you have, if you're a soldier, policeman, when you get on that mat, there's a very clear hierarchy. And so you either wash out, you leave, your ego can't handle it, or you begin to embrace the hierarchy and say, I have something to learn. I have something that this blue belt, this purple belt, this brown belt, this black belt can teach me. And if you can submit to that hierarchy, then you begin to learn. The quicker that you can submit to that is the quicker that you can learn. One of the interesting things is that as you begin to climb the ranks, you begin to take on the role of both student and teacher. So as you become a blue belt, you start to teach the white belts. As a purple belt, you begin to teach the blue belts and the white belts. And so this constant evolution of being both student and teacher is something that's really, really valuable and very, very clear in jiu-jitsu. It's not as clear in the business world. In the work world, in companies, you often have people that come in with huge egos and there's no belt system. So they can come in and maybe someone's your boss or they're not your boss, but being able to act like there's a belt system when you can recognize, oh, wow, this person has something that they can offer me. Let me submit to them so that I can learn and grow in my career. There's no belt around your waist in a corporation. And so you have to be extra vigilant to make sure that you actually seek this out. And that's one of the things that jiu-jitsu did for me really well, is that it made me think about how can I have a technical approach to getting better at my job also. And so, yeah, as it relates to leadership, if you want to be a great leader, go out and learn as much as you can and ask as many questions as you can, and just know that you're never going to know everything.
Yeah, no, that's true, and it's actually to your point of the belt system. It's funny. A lot of people don't know this, but when you're coming through the colored ranks, white, blue, purple, brown, what kind of bar do you have on that belt? It's a black bar. Now, it's because you're seeking the black belt, right? When you get black belt, it becomes a red bar. You're seeking the red belt. So, I mean, a lot of people don't look at it that way. They just kind of see the black bar and the underbelts as like it's just a spot for stripes. That's really not clearly defined. Is like that's division. There's stages. There's the hierarchy, and then there's the bar on there because that's what you're seeking. And then once you get black belt, you're still in the process of always learning. So that's why it's a red bar, because you're seeking, the red belt. That's the goal after black belt, obviously. But, you don't see a lot of people talk about that in the jiu-jitsu world and how important that is in the business world, to not only follow the hierarchy, but to have the vision of what the future is.
Yeah.
So I think that's a huge part of it too. What do you think about your findings so far because on your show, you've had not only multiple time world champion competitors, in jiu-jitsu, but just big time business people. That's obviously the goal of your podcast. Do you find, obviously there's correlations and similarities between the two, but is there something to be said where a competitor in the sport of jiu-jitsu, it's two different things to be a competitor and a world champion, but also have the business mind and the business acumen to either have an academy or to, be successful that way? Because let's face it, there's a lot of broke world champions out there, So I think guys that have that goal, the jiu-jitsu competitors that have that goal of being a world champion is great. But something like following business jiu-jitsu and really learning the intertwinings of the two, business and jiu-jitsu, can help athletes that have the goal right now of competing, but in the future want to be, businessmen, so to speak.
Absolutely. That's a really deep question and a great question. And it's also part of my motivation for writing this book. The reason why I wanted to write about jiu-jitsu and business was because so often on a weekly basis, my teammates at Budokan would come up to me and ask me questions about business. They'd either want to start a business or they had started a business and it wasn't going well. And I would often equate it to jiu-jitsu and use jiu-jitsu as a metaphor in order to explain situations that they were going through. And so it hurts me when I see people who are excelling in one area of their life and not able to carry the lessons over to another area of their life. The thing that I loved about jiu-jitsu was I took the lessons and I actually brought them with me to business. And it was just so impactful for me. And we could discuss some of the actual lessons a little later, because I want to answer your question. When I see a world champion, like, for example, I was talking to Gordon about this, Gordon Ryan, and I asked him about a principle which he uses and knows so well in jiu-jitsu, which is causing a dilemma. He often talks about causing a dilemma in jiu-jitsu, which is a principle that's carried over from war, the horns of a dilemma. And so he talks about the interplay between the upper body and the lower body, whereby he creates a dilemma for his opponents where they could choose the lesser of two evils, but either way they're losing. This is something that is key in negotiation when you're trying to win a successful negotiation. You need to make a circumstance where you win in either case. Now, this can sound abstract, except in the case for me, like when I'm looking for stores for mixology or I'm negotiating a lease, in some cases, I can't just offer up any deal. Of course, if a new business comes to me and they want me to give away the space as the landlord, they want me to give them everything for free, they want me to pay for their build out, they want me to give them 6 months of free rent, I need to start to create situations and dilemmas where they come into the space and it's not going to cost me a tremendous amount of money, where I'm risking maybe 6 months or a year betting on a tenant. They open up and then they're out of business. So one way that you can do that is by negotiating more security deposit, for example, or have them personally guarantee a lease. So there's methods that you can use to cause dilemmas in business as well. That's a very simple one. When I was talking to Gordon, he understood this very, very well from the perspective of jiu-jitsu. But I asked him if he understood it from the perspective, because I think that he's a world-class marketer. And so my question to him was, is your marketing, is your social media intentional? How intentional is it? How much thought are you putting into this? How good are you at developing? Like when he had a fight coming up for who's number one or Kasai, and he's building up the demand by chirping all day and going after his opponents. Was it intuitive for him, or was he using some kind of methodology? And he said it was mostly intuitive for him. I was very complimentary of this because his marketing skills were unbelievable. In the industry, we call that earned media versus paid media. Paid media is things like you go out and buy Facebook ads, Instagram ads, Google AdWords. Earned media is when you don't pay for it, but you're getting thousands or tens of thousands of likes, comments, impressions, and shares. I find him to be masterful, whether people are agreeing or disagreeing. And so this is something that he understood extremely simply through the course of his own life and through jiu-jitsu. And what I hope to do in this book is go and explain that through the lens of jiu-jitsu in the business world.
Right. So how important is it, right? We talked about Gordon, and Gordon is actually, he knows how to build his brand, right? How important is it for the athletes to build their brand like that, as well as even schools Because we see this with schools too, where they're not really building out their brand, or they're not building it out the correct way. So how important is it for them?
I'll quote one of my guests, Ricardo Almeida, legendary UFC pride fighter, ADCC champion. He said, once you decide to open up an academy, you are now in business. And a business should be treated like a business, just like anything else. If you're going to do it with your full heart and soul and do it the right way. And so my opinion is that if you are going to open a business, try to make it the best business you could possibly make it. Many people that turn their passion into their career, whether it's martial arts, music, nightlife, restaurateurs, they go in because it's a thing that they love. Very quickly, they find out that a career and loving something is not enough to get you through those dark moments. Why? Because most of hard work are things you don't like to do, right? If you love to do jiu-jitsu, but you hate lifting weights, you hate road work, you hate dieting, you're probably not going to be a world champion, because at some point, your natural talent is only going to take you so far. So as that relates to business, if you're just an incredible jiu-jitsu practitioner, that might not be enough to make you an incredible gym owner, because being an incredible gym owner is about creating a great culture, a great environment. And this is something Greg and I have spoken about. I've always been so impressed by the culture and the environment. He's got world champions coming down. He's got some of the best in the business, in the world, training on his mats alongside of his students. He's got kids. He's got combat veterans. Today I was training with Eric. He's a 20-year combat veteran rescue pilot. So how does he sit on the same mat as a garbage man, electrician, a teacher, a CEO? You know, we got Rich Byrne on the mat as the CEO of a REIT. So creating this culture and making a welcome place and doing it profitably is incredibly difficult. And you can't do it unless you actually say, I'm going to go out of my way to try to be an amazing business person. If I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu, now I want to be the equivalent of a black belt in business.
Now, do you think most people miss the fact, and this is one of the things I always say, like once you have a website or some online brand, you are a media company and you need to treat it like a media company, right? So do you think a lot of people miss that fact? Like once they have a website, they become a media company to some degree, or at least part of their business?
I think that is one of the hardest things for some people to get over, myself included. I very famously, in my group of friends, quit Instagram in 2013, and I was off Instagram until I started Business Jiu Jitsu. Business Jiu Jitsu, with the exception of my business, all my businesses are on Instagram, but me personally, I wasn't on it at all, and I didn't think it was healthy. My contention was that social media was going to dissolve, and we would look at social media the way that we look at cigarettes, something that we don't let our kids do, and something that is just completely unhealthy. Now, I might have just been an early adopter on that, the way I see the world being ripped apart, politics. But on the flip side of that coin, when I started Business Jiu Jitsu, I said, how am I not going to leverage the most powerful marketing tool at my disposal?
Well, especially if you're talking about earned media, right? You know,
so I believe it has never been more important to have a personal brand as an athlete, a gym, a business. There are so many tools at your disposal that you don't even have to pay for. All you have to do is be very, very consistent and get better and better each day. So the more consistent you are posting and the better the content, the more you'll be rewarded with following. The algorithmic approach from YouTube, Instagram rewards consistency and quality. And I just can't say enough how powerful it is for niche businesses like us. You know, the jiu-jitsu world is a niche. We couldn't be more niche. You know, we're niche in martial arts, and martial arts in itself is niche. But that doesn't mean that Who's Number One last night didn't have hundreds of thousands of people viewing it and maybe millions of impressions throughout all of their earned media. So a company like Flow Sports, which is the parent company of Flow Grappling, they are winning because they're tapping into all of these niches. It's pretty incredible. And so if you bring that back to how it relates to your own social media, why would you, it's kind of like Dean Lister saying to John Danaher, why would you ignore 50% of the human body?
Mm-hmm.
Why would you ignore the place where all current social interaction is taking place?
Mm-hmm.
Billions of people around the world are on these social channels. And whether you think it's corny, whether you think it's silly, of which I did, you can't ignore the fact that it's unbelievably powerful. And then the last thing I'll say to that before we move on from this topic, I think podcasting is one of the most important and powerful platforms moving forward, especially during COVID. It became something for me personally that helped me escape, helped me make connections, speak to people. I'm a very social person. I always have been. Not being able to do jiu-jitsu for all those months was torture for me. So podcasting, being able to meet people, being able to talk is, I think, something that's invaluable and only going to become more relevant.
Do you think also too, I think what happens is, I mean, you look at this in, like with actors and actresses, like, the bigger their following is, the more they're going to get, a role. And even, I think even with people in jiu-jitsu, a lot of them out there looking for sponsors. So the bigger their following is, the more likely they're even going to get those sponsors to sponsor them along their journey.
Yes. Yeah, that's a tough reality of, clout, of fame. The more clout and the more fame you have, the better that it is for making money. I mean, you can be the most incredible jiu-jitsu player that no one's ever heard of. And we all know plenty of guys like that. I've met people that are so phenomenal at jiu-jitsu you couldn't even imagine, and they don't have any interest in going on social media. They are family men, they have a career, and they're in the gym and they train alongside of world champions. John Danaher talks about that all the time. He was on Joe Rogan's podcast yesterday, and he talked about this. He said, do you know how many guys, lawyers that have come in and they fell in love or they moved? So they could have been as good as Gordon Ryan, but they just had different priorities in their life. That's how it relates to social media and to building a following as well, or building a business generally.
Yep.
You can akin building a business to building a social media following. It's very, very similar.
Yeah, definitely. And then on your findings in your podcast so far, switching into the topic of owning an academy specifically. I mean, you see a lot of people out there. It's kind of like best practices will emerge, and you see what other people are doing. Oh, that's successful. Oh, that works. That doesn't work. Do you think it's definitely, obviously we discussed that it's a difference of being a good competitor versus a good teacher. And then on top of that, being a good business person, knowing, your area, your demographics, things like that. But in your findings, is it kind of like everybody's at their own will and freedom to try different things? Or, in addition to that, are you finding that people who own their own academies are kind of winging it, so to speak? And then could you see certain academies that do that? Certain academies, they try everything they can to be by the book and do certain things, and it just doesn't work out. It has to be a trial and error kind of thing. What have you seen out there so far with academy owners specifically?
There's no one way to success. There's no one path. There's no one type of gym. In some cases, like guys like Ricardo Almeida, has a huge kids program and is also training Frankie Edgar and Zabit and has this huge network of affiliates. He couldn't meet a more humble guy. That's not to say that Freddie Trillo, who is a former SWAT officer and a police reserve officer down in Miami, has a much different type of academy. He is an affiliate under Tom DeBlas down in Miami, and his academy has a whole different vibe, a whole different feeling. Every single business, every single academy, even if they look exactly alike on the outside, you don't know what the mechanism is like on the inside that makes it work, makes it tick, controls, and then again, down to the culture. Mm-hmm. I am in the retail clothing business and e-commerce clothing business. Fiercely competitive in the Northeast. Fiercely competitive. In some cases, I sell the exact same clothes as 2 other stores in the exact same shopping center. How can you have 3 stores selling the exact same thing and still compete? Well, it's very, very, very difficult. What it comes down to is, how do you treat people? How do they feel when they come in? What does it smell like? Is it clean? Is it dusty? Is the staff well trained? Is the bathroom immaculate? So oftentimes when a competitor of mine will go on sale, a new staff member will call me freaking out. We have to go on sale. They're on sale this weekend. And I'll say something to the effect of, I don't care what they do. I'm only worried about what we do, how you treat people when they walk through the door. So it's a very similar thing in my findings for business and jiu-jitsu. Academies, sometimes you walk in and they put $150,000 into the most beautiful mats, the best equipment. The place is huge. It looks like every reason why they should be killing it. And they're about to be out of business. Now, in the wake of COVID, that's not what I'm talking about. Every single gym owner in the whole world is sucking wind. I'm really talking about pre-COVID here. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, what makes it different for me, and I've traveled all over the country to different gyms, is what Greg has made so beautifully at his academy and what exists at my home academy, Budokan. It's the people. When you walk in, do they make you feel welcome? The very first time that I ever went to Hampton Jiu-Jitsu, I met one of Chris's, now he's a purple belt, he was a blue belt at the time, Chris, and he welcomed me in, and it was just a blue belt, except because of the whole culture there, top down from Greg, I kept coming back and coming back and coming back. Not every martial arts school that I've been to, I go back to, because sometimes it's just a room full of knuckleheads. And so that will significantly hurt the business also.
Yeah, I mean, I think that couldn't have been said, more perfect. Yeah, I mean, in my experience, that's exactly, the type of thing that I was thinking about. Now you confirming it, especially with your guests that you're having on your podcast. I'm thinking, as time goes on, now you're talking with COVID and what's happened with the pandemic and how we go forward with, especially with academies. But even pre-pandemic, it seemed to me that still, like you said, the number one thing is how you treat everybody when they walk into the door. Do they feel pressured? Do they feel like, oh, well, they're trying to get me on a contract? Or do they feel like it's not a vibe where you're welcomed on the mat? Maybe they feel like, oh, these guys are going to try to test me, or do these people want to come in and they just want more people to train with? Like, that's what it should be about,
Yeah.
I feel like that's what's going to lead to a more successful academy. There's little things here and there that need to be, done in pricing and such. But if your main goal is to do what we just said and to make it welcoming and that way, I think, you're on the right path. And even like you brought up Tom DeBlas and his affiliation, I really like all of Tom's things that he puts on social media. I mean, but on top of that Tom DeBlas has like how many affiliates? I mean, this guy's affiliates all over the place. And I'm not 100%, but I would think it's because he's vetting the people and he's not being a dictator and saying, oh, well, every affiliate has to do this A to Z. You know what I mean? Like, I believe, I could be wrong, I don't know, but I believe that the best way to run an affiliate is to support them. Rising tides raises all ships. But you're actually not telling them how to run their business, because every business, like you said, is different. And you're going to have affiliates around the country. Not every place is going to be the same. We're not running a McDonald's. This isn't the food industry where everything could be cookie cutter and cardboard. This is the martial arts industry, a service industry where you got to give the business owners the freedom, with guidance. So I what do you think of that?
I think that there's some things that you can really benefit from being part of an association. John Danaher was talking about this on the Lex Friedman podcast. He was talking about training heuristics, basically principles which help you get faster. For example, one that my sensei brings up all the time, and most jiu-jitsu practitioners will know about, learning the rule of 2 arms or no arms. So if you leave one arm in between someone's legs, you're going to get triangled. So learning the principle of 2 arms through the legs or 1 arm is a training heuristic to help you learn how to get better faster. In business, there are similar training heuristics. There are things that must be done and must be done properly. One of the ones that we use in my business is paying our bills on time. It's non-negotiable. So many small businesses struggle with always having late bills. And they say things like, well, I would have paid the bills, but I didn't have the money. Right? Like in Billy Madison, or is your Happy Gilmore? I wanted to pay, but I didn't have the money. So I find this to be, this is one of the things that I teach business owners very quickly. Number one, how to budget. Number two, how to pay bills quickly. You'd be surprised at how often business owners deprioritize the right things to pay first. And oftentimes are paying for the things that should be the last first. For example, how many flat screen TVs does your academy need? How many rolls of toilet paper? Now there's certain things that have to be there. Cleaning supplies, geese in stock for your people to come in. But learning how to budget and pay bills is a heuristic in which it's non-negotiable. You have to learn how to do that first. That helps you build the foundation to build on top of, to grow. How do you think all the other businesses did it before you? So you have a population of students, and it's your job to manage those finances in a way that builds a healthy ecosystem so that your business can keep growing and growing and growing. Ultimately, it's the story of the three pigs. What kind of business do you have? Is it a straw house? Is it a wood house? Is it a brick house? And so business fundamentals are non-negotiable. Now it goes back to the other thing that you were saying, the freedom to make decisions the way that you want. Every single gym and academy and dojo is in a different location, has a different student population, has different needs, desires. Some are MMA focused. Some have 250 children. Some have no children and have only adults. You can't have the same rules, regulations, principles, class schedules for someone that's in New York as in Allentown, Pennsylvania. If you were a dictator and you said our class schedule is every single day we have a children's class at 5, we have this at 6, we have this well, that might not work in New York City or Long Island because we have a different kind of working environment than they do down in Florida. So yes, I agree with you. You have to have the flexibility to be able to run your academy the way that you see fit. I run my stores and my real estate the way that I like, but I try to take from all the best of the best of the best. One of the things when someone wants to argue with me about one of my principles, I say, do you know where I got this principle from? I learned this. I didn't make this up. I didn't just decide one day this is the way that I'm going to do it arbitrarily because I went and I learned it. This goes back to what you said earlier, Greg, about learning from the black belt, humbling yourself. It's not my gut instincts, typically. It's typically something that I've deeply studied and I learned and I repped and I trained over many, many, many years.
So you mentioned your home gym, which is Budokan, right? Let's look at what they let's look at some footage of what they from your I guess it was what was this from? This was from actually your.
So my first book that I launched was called This Is It. And the full title was If You're Waiting for a Sign to Start Your Business, This Is It. And a gentleman named Will Harris, who is the man behind Anatomy of a Fighter. Have you guys ever heard of Anatomy of a Fighter? It's one of
I have both of those, yeah.
He's the most prominent mixed martial arts documentarian. He's boys with Usman, Khabib, and he found them before they ascended to the top, before they were champions. And he was in the locker rooms with them. He was on the gyms with them. And everyone was like, who's this Anatomy of a Fighter guy? So Joe Rogan had that same question. He found out it was this guy, Will Harris. So he brings Will Harris on the Joe Rogan podcast. I hit him up out of the blue. And I was like, hey, I just wrote this book. I was like, you should come and tell my story. Which brings me back to another thing that I always tell people about. I'd love to talk to you about this after the video.
Sure.
One of the things I hope to help people with is learning how to network. Learning how to network is so unbelievably important. Greg, a few times you said you complimented me by talking about the guests that I've had on my podcast. And a lot of people have asked me, how did you get Olympians, billionaires, major CEOs, world champions? Well, the truth is that once you get the first ball rolling, it loosens it up for the next one.
Yeah,
absolutely.
When I started this project, I had 0 connections. I didn't know any of these people. I had 0 followers on social media, and I had never been on social media. I'm not a world champion. I'm not a billionaire. And so how do you begin to form these connections? Well, all the same things that I did in my business life, I just brought over to this podcast. And I said, I'm going to start reaching out to them. And my bet was that if I reached out with enough conviction, that they would want to talk to me. Mm-hmm. Because I did have something, I did have a perspective. I was passionate about this. Not every single person I reached out to said yes. Some people ghosted me. But the point was, I never stopped. And then after every single interview, it always led to my next interview. When I interviewed Rich Byrne, I was like, who else do you think I should talk to? And he said, why don't you talk to Greg? I was like, absolutely. I'd love to talk to Greg. So every single time I spoke to one person, it led to the next. I finally got connected with Gordon because one of my business partners in real estate built Dorado Beach Club. It's a 5 ultra beautiful resort down in Puerto Rico. Well, one day, all of a sudden, I see a picture on Instagram of Mo Jassim, who runs ADCC, Gordon Ryan, John Donahar, and Nikki Rod at Dorado. And I'm like, what are they doing at Dorado? Well, we all know that they ended up moving down there. So I called my business partner, Kenny Blatt, shout out Kenny Blatt. And I was like, do you know that the world's best jiu-jitsu competitors are at your property? He's like, what's jiu-jitsu? So I was like, do you see tattooed gigantic gorillas? He's like, yeah, of course I know those guys. So I had to explain to him what it was. And he actually knew Mo Jassim very, very well because Mo bought a property there. So I said, can you please put me in touch with him? I got in touch with Mo. Mo got me in touch with Gordon. I did the podcast with Gordon. And then Gordon's like, you should talk to John. And so I went from zero to speaking to a true hero of mine, both in Gordon and John, in about 6 months. So Greg has phenomenal connections through his work with Kasai and Jiu-Jitsu Motivation. He has relationships with so many world-class black belts. I know his podcast is going to be phenomenal because he has so much ground underneath him already. I love talking to the person who's never met any of these people before and saying to them, you can do it, and I'm going to show you how to do it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so we're gonna see what your instructor, and we're gonna look at this video. Has to say about
this is one of my teammates. This is Akbar.
All right.
Akbar is a phenomenal black belt. Great friend. 9, 20. 6, 7, 8, 9, 30. In the life of an entrepreneur, you get to pick any 24 out of 24 hours that you want. My phone is never off. Even when I'm on vacation, I still am thinking about and running the businesses. So it's very important for me to get out and exercise, doing jiu-jitsu, running. If I didn't do those things, I'd fall apart at the seams. I never consider going and taking an hour jiu-jitsu class or going for a run a break from work. That's just part of my work. That helps me keep it together. That helps my mind stay clear. It's my therapy. It's for my health. But the lessons that you learn on the mat are directly applicable to business.
Talk about this guy right here. Talk about
how
this
we
guy?
know each other.
Oh my goodness, man.
10 years.
Oh man, yeah, it's been 10 years at least. Yeah, man. Jordan came in here at our old location, and you know, I'm trying to think. I think I was a white belt. Yeah. I think I was still a white belt when you first started came, right? Like and then
a year ahead of me.
I was a little bit ahead of you, and then I think I just got promoted to blue. But man, listen, what else can I say? Jordan just always been around. Just a good person, good friend. You know, there's been times where he kind of was, you know, left a little bit. But the thing about martial arts, like my sensei Nardu always says, is if you leave in good standing, you always come back. And Jordan has just been like the consummate martial artist, especially over the last 7 years, right? You just consistency. That's like the, you know, I say one of the biggest pillars of martial arts, you know, you know, staying consistent.
Professor Akbar and I started training together. When I started, he was already up and running about 10 years ago. He's
amazing guy, great friend, and amazing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competitor.
This is the old dojo.
You see that room?
Location. Yeah. So
this is how we started.
That's where we started,
Humble
you know?
beginnings. Everybody.
Yeah, much. I mean, not even a third of the size of the place we're in now. So one bathroom.
Just a room and a mat.
End of the day.
Okay, so we are going to take you back in time to when your friend, Professor Akbar, was a blue belt. And we're going to have you rate his role now that you're a purple belt. Now, I actually fought your friend,
No, you didn't.
Akbar, absolutely, in a Pride tournament in around, I think it was June 2010. So you're gonna review this role that we're gonna have right now.
So it's Professor
Let's do it.
and Brian DeLuca, beat circa 2010.
2010, 11 years ago. 11 years ago.
Oh my
How long
God.
we've all been doing this stuff.
Let's
So-
look for me in the background.
So I'm just gonna leave the volume off so we could have some commentary over this.
Yeah.
So actually, the referee is Kevin Wynn, who's like a 2nd or 3rd degree black belt at Wynn Jiu Jitsu at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. I came up with Kevin years and years ago. We both started really early. And then, so this is now, you got Brian on the right. You got Professor Akbar on the left. All right. Let's see what we got.
Right.
2010. Yeah. Anything you see, shout it out. We can pause it, go over some stuff. But yeah, it's just to be like a hip fire critique of this role here.
All right. Well, I see you guys feeling each other out.
This is what weight was this?
Well, you know what's funny? I actually fought. This was like Nogi, I think it's 178. I actually just finished the bracket for, I think, 154, and I was actually in this bracket also. So he probably had about a good 30 pounds on me. And I just finished a bracket that I actually won that bracket at this tournament. And now I was thrown into this 181 bracket and had to fight your professor. Or Professor Akbar, I should say. So, yeah.
You guys feeling each other out on the feet. You guys are having a stare down. Let's see.
Yeah, a little stare down, grip fighting.
Well, you know what it was?
Collar tie.
Being smaller, I didn't want to be under him. Like that was my concern here. So I was just sort of waiting, trying to feel out, like, should I shoot or is he going to sprawl? Like, is he really going to sprawl on me? Am I going to have to fight from under him? So, and I didn't want that as a blue belt.
Yeah.
It's amazing to see the evolution in Professor Akbar's game. He started jiu-jitsu later in life. And today I think he's exactly 10 years older than me. I'm going to be 36 next week. So he's around 46. And this was many, many years ago, but he really made competition a big, big, big part of his life. He would go and train and just developed an incredible game, a really, really beautiful bottom game, and a deep half guard game, something that he really favored.
And this is blue belt open weight, or
this is blue belt? No, this
division?
is blue belt the division. Okay. This is the bracket.
So he shot in on you.
So he shot in on me, and I had like that guillotine choke where you come in under here, and I could hear him gurgling. This is why I'm not like I could hear him gurgling.
Yeah, you got you out of bounds.
Yeah. So let's watch this. So he's driving. I'm trying to sprawl out. He just drives it out of bounds.
Yeah, and this way you can see the evolution in even the point system in the tournaments, because normally they wouldn't try to reset something like this. Right. A guillotine again, you know what I mean? How can you reset something like that?
Right. Yeah, and you just never could get that submission back again, even though it didn't leave.
So let's take a look at Professor Akbar's guillotine defense here in his blue belt years. I see he's got his left arm on the hip.
It looks like he probably has the right hand controlling his wrist too.
Yeah, he does. He had the right hand under the wrist. Absolutely.
And you're probably like, shit, I shouldn't have went out of bounds.
Yeah. And I was like, all right, man. I was like, and I'm still trying to choke him. I don't think he was gurgling at this point, and he was.
He's driving. Oh, nice.
And then I sort of pulled guard.
So now let's see. So he gets two.
Let's see if he can pass your guard and start to work a choke up. Looks like he pops his head out.
Yeah.
So now he's looking to come to pass. He's working knee on belly. Let's see if the ref, looking up to the ref to see if he can get some points. The ref does not award them. Nope. He gets 2 points for passing.
This is also iPhone circa, like iPhone.
Yeah, a little shaky.
Yeah.
That's the thing too, is the changing in the rules too, is now the refs won't give the points unless they clearly see the escape of the guillotine. Oh, now you're going to lock on a Kimura.
Now I got Kimura.
Kimura. Let's see if Akbar starts to work the traditional defense. He spins for the armbar.
Yeah, step over armbar attempt. You Brian needed a guard, a half guard.
I know. I thought, there's my blue belt in the space.
Oh, you can take the back. Kimura trap.
Oh, Kimura trap.
Right to a stack pass.
Yeah.
This is like you got some nice defense going over there, pushing into the crook of the armpit.
Yeah.
Working the hip too, moving them low. Let's see if you do a nice shrimp to recover your guard.
I remember him stacking his knee behind my shoulder. Do you see how he broke me up at one point?
Yep.
And then I didn't come back down. So I see my mistake there. Now watching it and turning into him.
He's covering his hips. Let's see.
Switch hips, yeah.
Oh, he goes to take mount.
You mount. So I could tell you, this is pretty much how the fight ends. We run out of time.
Yeah.
And then he sits on mount until pretty much time comes out. I mean, don't get me wrong. He was trying to choke me and whatever, right? But pretty much this is how the fight ends. It times out, and
you're very gracious to show a win for Professor Akbar here.
Absolutely. Hey,
a real gentleman.
You can't do jiu-jitsu and not expect to lose quite a few times in your career. You know.
Well, I gotta tell you guys, I'm very grateful that you are spotlighting Professor Akbar here, because he is just an unbelievable human, friend, and teammate. And he's also a big supporter of my podcast. Every time I put up an episode, he's watched it, comes in, wants to talk about it. And he has gotten a few shout outs on my podcast before.
Oh, he's going to love that video.
He's gonna love that. That was 11 years ago when I had to dig into old hard drives to find this thing. When I saw him talking about you, I was like, I know this guy. I fought this guy. And then I was like, when? Who remembers? But, I was trying to dig out when I fought him, and it actually took me a while to find it, but I found it, And I remember, like I said, he's a very gracious guy. I remember even after the fight, we had a nice conversation. Great guy. And that's one of the things I love about jiu-jitsu is even when you're a competitor with someone, everyone's pretty friendly about it. Win, loss, everyone's very respectful.
I mean, that relates to business too, right there. There you go.
Definitely. I've made some good friends competing against them, and people I've stayed in touch with. This is actually you're the second person I've spoken to on a podcast. Another one of my podcast guests, Zach Manslani, who is Finishers Enterprises, 10th Planet Bethlehem. Mm-hmm. He fought Professor Akbar also in a tournament. So, yeah, like I said, Professor Akbar, he's really made the rounds. He made competing a very big part of his life over the past 10 years.
Yeah. So now what's the future looking like for Business Jiu Jitsu? Can you share any future guests you got coming? Can you share any future ideas for the show? What do you got?
Yeah, I'm scheduled to go next week down to Puerto Rico and train with John and Gordon.
Wow.
It actually coincides with my birthday, which is pretty cool. So I gave myself a little birthday present to go down and get absolutely twisted, bent, and bruised by the best guys in the world. I hope that goes well. I'm starting to write the book in July.
Okay.
Been compiling research. I've taken on some coaching clients for business, and I hope to expand that a little bit. I started a coaching program through my company, Mixology Clothing Company, and we have about 200 students that are signed up for the first class. It's starting on July 5th. And I'm taking the same curriculum and style, and I'm going to bring it over to Business Jiu Jitsu and see if I could do some Zoom coaching classes and see how many, maybe get 20, 30, 50 guys. We'll see, guys and gals I would love to get jiu-jitsu practitioners who are interested in starting businesses or in business and just kind of looking for tips, tricks, heuristics. So
you mentioned earlier some of the lessons, what are some lessons just high level that you could give everyone right now, like to-dos if they're starting a business or they're trying to become a professional jiu-jitsu player?
So I'm going to go back to the networking for a moment. I think that this is maybe one of the most overlooked and easy to build aspects of being part of any community, whether it's a jiu-jitsu gym, a CrossFit gym, or anything else. When you join an academy, when you're in an academy, if you are a good member of that gym, that school, that dojo, you have a built-in network. If you didn't grow up in a house with parents who are business people and entrepreneurs, you might not recognize the fact that you do have a network. When I sit down with people that I mentor and coach, and I say, what does your network look like? Who can help you? And they say, I don't know anybody. I say, you're sitting in front of me right now. How did you get to me? One of the first things I do, which is so simple, is I have them write down a list of every single person in their life, starting with their parents and their inner circle, their family, friends, coaches, teamworks, everybody at their academy and dojo, anybody that they've done business with. And I ask them a simple question. What have you done for them recently? You want to be successful. You want to get deals done. Maybe you're a realtor. Maybe you're a contractor. Maybe you're a teacher. You want to do something. You want to grow. You have a t-shirt business. What have you done for the people that you want things done for you? And I say, forget about trying to sell them. Just begin to be of service. Like, well, what do you mean? It seems pretty abstract. I said, if you start to listen to the people in your life, you will see that everybody needs help with something. Be the person who's always of service. Sweep up and mop after every jiu-jitsu class. If something is broken, offer to fix it. If someone's moving, offer to help them move. If an old person's walking down the stairs, offer to help them. Write thank you notes to every single person that has helped you ever, starting with school teachers, coaches. They will love to hear from you. Pastors, rabbis. All of a sudden, when you start to have this type of attitude, unbelievable things start to happen in your life. An attitude of giving yields so many great things. And the thing is, when you start to make this a habit, all of a sudden, all those people in your life start to want to do things for you too. But it doesn't start with you asking for a million things. In business, we sometimes call those people an ask hole, ASKHOL.
Yeah.
They're constantly asking for help, asking for advice. It's like, I've given you the advice already. How about you take some action on it? So this might seem abstract to people when I try to start to teach them how to network. But the thing that I love about a jiu-jitsu academy is go up to the person who sits in the back of class, who doesn't open their mouth, who doesn't say hi to people. Get them involved. Hey, how are you doing? What's your name? What do you do? Do you have siblings? What are you doing this weekend? Get everybody in the academy involved. If you become the connector, all of a sudden you start to know everything about everybody. It starts to carry out and ripple into all other places in your life. It drives me crazy when people have like, oh, that's the dojo nickname. Now, I get it. Sometimes you have a dojo nickname and someone to, no, I want to know their real name. I want to know what they really do. That way, if I have a plumbing accident and it's midnight and there's a guy in my academy who's a plumber, I know who to call. If there is a doctor, by the way, doctors are incredibly good at this. I got to give all the chiropractors a big shout out there. I got to give all of the physical therapists a shout out there. They know this. They get taught this in their schooling. Your academy is a built-in network, and it's a great place to start. Fundamental building your network. When you say, I don't know anybody, no one's going to help me. I don't have a rich dad. I don't have a rich uncle. I don't have anybody who's giving me a leg up. And I say, bullshit. I just gave you the same advice that my rich dad, my rich uncle, all these people gave me when I was growing up around the dinner table. You think that they just handed it out? No, but I got a first class seat to watch it. Like, I agree. I was incredibly privileged. My dad is an amazing entrepreneur. My grandfather was an entrepreneur. My great-grandfather came to this country with nothing. My grandfather and my grandmother lived in a tenement building. They had nothing. I mean, less than nothing. But what they did have was this incredible work ethic and just like an animalistic desire to grow and get better. And so for me, it was never an option not to have a job and not to do this. And so jiu-jitsu has just brought me so much in the way of metaphor to be able to explain these lessons. But business, on the flip side of that, has brought me more prosperity. Jiu-jitsu has helped me really turn that prosperity and keep amplifying it and growing it and growing it and growing it.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Well, Jordan, thank you for joining us today, man. Where else can people, besides your book, right, and your book coming out, where else can people find more about you?
My company's website is chartorganization.com, CHART organization.com. Most of my businesses are listed on there. You can get in touch with me through there. I encourage you, if you're in the jiu-jitsu community and you have business questions, please reach out to me. If you're an academy owner and you have issues with your landlord and you need advice, I'd be happy to help you. If you have a small business and you're struggling, you don't know where to start, just hit me up on Instagram or call me. My business phone number is on the website. I'm happy to help any jiu-jitsu or martial arts practitioners navigate through some of these problems. It's honestly research for me, because I'm thinking after I start the book research, I'm going to be launching this coaching program. So I often tell some of my mentors right now that, and this isn't bullshit, but as the CEO of a business, my time is extremely. If you were to put a number on the amount per hour, they couldn't afford me. Mm-hmm. So when I say reach out to me if you want help, I'm saying it with all my heart that I really do want to help people, and it's a part of my life's mission to help as many people as I can, especially in the martial arts community.
That's great. Yeah, and we definitely would love to get you back on post Puerto Rico. Mm-hmm. Training, interviewing, I'm sure you're going to be getting some insane, not only technique, but experience training with those guys and, interviewing them again. And, so we'd love to get you back on and get an update on everything and that experience in particular. I'm sure that's going to be amazing.
Yeah. When your book comes out, you definitely come back on and see us again.
Yeah. Well, the book is going to be, I would say, is at least 1.5 years, 2 years away from me.
Well, everyone's going to have to read your other one then.
Yeah. Yeah, please listen. The most beautiful part about my other book is how many failures I talk about. I promise, I hope I come off as I have failed so much. I have had so many failures on the way to big successes. Mm-hmm. And so if you want to hear about some big failures, go read my first book.
Yeah. And that's a big part about jiu-jitsu too, right? Yeah. We talk about that. We watched that match. How many failed things happened during that match? And, and you got to get up and you got to recover from it. That's
my favorite saying is fail as fast as you can. I mean, the quicker you can learn and get tapped, and then you learn by getting in the bad positions, right, and you learn by failing. So fail as quick as you can.
Yeah.
Well, Jordan, thank you for joining us today. It was a pleasure meeting you.
Amazing, yes, Jordan. Yes. Appreciate it. So much.
Anytime, anything for you, Greg. I'm so grateful for you and everything you've built, and it's just an honor to be on the fringe of your academy.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. That means a lot. It's been a lot of work, but it's been a pleasure doing it and meeting everybody. And just like you said, it's all about the connections you make along the way and the friendships you make. And this is one of them. So really appreciate it. And guys, check out Business Jiu Jitsu Podcast. It's going to be, on Instagram, everywhere. Where else, Jordan? On Apple?
Yeah, it's you can find it everywhere. BusinessJiu-Jitsu.com, at Business Jiu Jitsu on Instagram, at Business Jiu Jitsu at YouTube, Spotify.
Awesome. All right. Thanks again, guys. Make sure you reach out, and we'll talk to you guys soon.